Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-token lovers of liberty. It is Friday, May 27th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Congratulations, everyone. We made it to the weekend, and one of the best weekends, Memorial Day weekend, the symbolic start of summer here in the United States of America, although you wouldn't know it here in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, looking out over the south waterfront where dark gray clouds are perched overhead. We're going to get a lot more rain this weekend, I have a feeling, but nevertheless, it is the beginning of the summer season. The big movie blockbusters are all coming out, and it's going to be a great summer for marijuana legalization. And we're going to be covering it for you all summer long here on the Russ Belville Show as we continue the Legalize America Tour, 50 by 50. And our next stop is Phoenix, Scottsdale area, heading to the Arizona desert for the beginning of summer. There, I'll get my summertime dose there, that's for sure. But going to be down there for 3 days with the Cannabis Radio crew, and then making my way up to Aspen, Colorado over the weekend for the Aspen Legal Seminar, the normal Aspen Legal Seminar, which of course culminates in the Saturday cookout at Hunter S. Thompson's Owl Farm. I'll be bringing my bass up there and getting involved in the jam session, and of course I'll be telling you all about it on subsequent shows. Lots of stuff coming up as far as June goes in the schedule. In addition to that Aspen Legal Seminar, the following weekend is the Michigan Cannabis Cup. We'll be out there near Flint, Michigan, actually out in Clio at the Clio Auto Speedway for the Michigan Cannabis Cup. And then the following week, it's off to the Cannabis World Conference and Business Expo at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City again. So we're heading back to New York for the middle of June, and then the weekend back to the Bay Area, San Francisco, the Cow Palace for the High Times Northern California Cannabis Cup on June 18th and 19th. That'll be followed by the Cannabis Business Summit and Expo with the NCIA, National Cannabis Industries Association, on the 20th through 22nd in Oakland, California. And then I'll be taking a week off at the end of June because I'm headed to Boise, Idaho to visit my parents for their 50th anniversary. That's right, 50 years my folks have been married, and as good a time to take a week off as any, if you ask me. We'll go visit the folks out there in Red State, Idaho. It's kind of my tolerance break, if you will. Now, coming up on today's show, all sorts of great stuff. We've got some cannabis radio news for you. We'll catch you up on the headlines. And then after that, we're going to switch things up a little bit. We've got some stupid prohibition story to tell you from the state of Iowa. That's a huge violation of Steinborn's law. We'll tell you all about it. And then we'll have some reefer madness debunked. We've got some audio from the police commissioner in New York City who's exhibiting some extreme signs of reefer madness. We need to bring them the cure. So that's what we're going to take care of right after the 20 after break. And then a very special activist agenda to close out the show, dedicated to Michael Kennedy, who passed away. He was the longtime legal counsel for High Times Magazine and a stalwart defender of civil liberties. He was a past president of the Criminal Defense Lawyers and a friend of the show. Back in 2010, Michael Kennedy heard my presentations on the Box Canyon of medical marijuana, and since then had been a huge fan of my work. And I really believe without Michael Kennedy's support, I probably wouldn't be as far ahead in my career as I am. So we're going to give that tribute to you from the Normal Conference, where Jerry Goldstein won the first ever Michael J. Kennedy Human Rights Award. That's all coming up on the Russ Belville Show.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Keep your cannabis cravings under control. Feed your mind with CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
During Dance with the Stars, I started feeling discomfort. Yeah. And not only that, I was doing these old man smells. And it was kind of embarrassing because, all the Dancing with the Stars crew, cast and crew, they were all young kids. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this old guy would come along and do one of those silent farts, that you don't know you're doing it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you smell, and everybody go, what the hell smells? And, it was me. And so I'd scurry off to the bathroom, and that's when I knew that there was something wrong.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPAs offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit NewEraCPAs.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Friday, May 27th, 2016. Toronto, Canada. Police on Thursday raided 43 medical marijuana dispensaries in Toronto, seizing hundreds of pounds of cannabis and making 90 arrests. Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders said the crackdown was on stores believed to be selling marijuana to recreational consumers. He also alleged that the shops were selling improperly labeled cannabis products that could be seen as a public safety risk. Protesters countered that Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pledged to legalize recreational marijuana soon throughout the entire country. Medical marijuana is legal in Canada, but only sales by mail through providers licensed by Health Canada are legal. Storefronts like the ones raided Thursday are not legal. East Los Angeles, California. Presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders once again made his pitch for voters to legalize marijuana in California this November. Speaking to a rally in East Los Angeles, Sanders told the crowd, quote, "It makes sense to legalize marijuana at this particular point. So if I were here in your state, I would vote yes on that issue," end quote. Last fall in Las Vegas, when asked about that state's legalization initiative already on the ballot, Sanders said, quote, "I suspect I would vote yes," end quote. In Santa Monica, Sanders referred to the California Adult Use of Marijuana Act, still yet to qualify for the ballot, saying, quote, "I tell you that if I lived in your state, I would vote for that initiative," end quote. Phoenix, Arizona. A doctor is upset after the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Phoenix blocked her from giving a lecture about marijuana's effects on veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. This summer, Dr. Sue Sisley is conducting a study on PTSD and medical marijuana that is funded by a Colorado marijuana research grant. Although the Drug Enforcement Administration approved her work, the Phoenix VA Medical Center told Sisley she couldn't give a presentation there. Medical marijuana is legal in Arizona, but it's still a federal crime to possess pot. The VA Center isn't allowed to promote or recruit veterans for marijuana research, said Dr. Samuel Agayo, Associate Chief of Staff for Research at Phoenix Hospital. Congress recently passed legislation that would allow VA doctors to discuss medical marijuana with veterans. Aguayo said the center might reconsider Sisley's lecture if that bill is signed into law. San Francisco, California. Former NFL running back Ricky Williams is a partner and spokesperson for Power Plant Fitness, a Bay Area gym believed to be the first to allow for cannabis use during workouts. Williams, known for his outspoken support for medical marijuana following an NFL career tormented by drug test failures, has partnered with Jim McAlpine, the founder of 420 Games, a series of 4.2-mile runs meant to change public perceptions of cannabis consumers. South Royalton, Vermont. Black drivers stopped by Vermont State Police were 5 times more likely to be searched than white drivers, even though contraband was more likely to be found when white motorists were searched, according to a report on 5 years of traffic stop data. The findings were presented Tuesday evening in a meeting of the State Police Senior Command Staff and an anti-bias committee of police employees and residents. The presentation did not include raw numbers of African Americans or members of other minority groups searched, but provided the total number of stops and the percentages by race and ethnicity. The percentage of stops of whites that resulted in searches was 1.1. The percentage involving black drivers was 5.1. Contraband was found 80% of the time in the searches of whites and 68.5% of the time in the searches of blacks. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Police say a Louisiana man accused of making his 8 and 10-year-old relatives smoke marijuana faces cruelty charges. Baton Rouge police tell The Advocate that Jason Lewis Taylor rolled marijuana blunts and provided them to the young boys on several occasions, instructing the children to smoke them. The police report says the 8-year-old boy was taken to the hospital in February after being told to smoke weed. The child later tested positive for marijuana. Police say both children said the 29-year-old Taylor allegedly smoked marijuana in front of them on several occasions. Taylor was arrested Wednesday on 2 counts of cruelty to juveniles and 1 count of illegal use of a controlled substance in the presence of a juvenile. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Friday, May 27, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
From dabs to chivas, sativas to indicas, we roll out a whole concentrate of fresh new content every week. It's like going from the greenhouse to the dispensary. CannabisRadio.com.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Stupid Prohibition Stories.
As a public service, the Russ Belville Show reminds you that smoking marijuana does not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana, and prohibition is always waiting for another victim. Learn your lesson from today's Stupid Prohibition Stories.
With your Stupid Prohibition Stories, I'm old-timey 1920s radio reporter Freddie Farrak. This just in from Newton, Iowa. An Iowa couple faces child endangerment and drug charges after police say they were caught riding in a vehicle driven by a 13-year-old. The Newton Daily News reports that 51-year-old Paul Deaton and 48-year-old Jacqueline Deaton of Colfax were arrested after the vehicle was stopped around 2:15 p.m. Sunday. Authorities say a Jasper County Sheriff's deputy noticed a heavy odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle, and Paul Deaton reached behind a seat and grabbed a pipe, along with 4 grams of marijuana. In addition to the child endangerment charge, Paul Deaton was charged with possession of a controlled substance and possession of drug paraphernalia. Jacqueline Deaton faces additional charges of possession of marijuana and permitting an unauthorized driver. Online court records did not list an attorney. I'm Freddie for Rock with your stupid prohibition story. Always sounds like Freddie is falling off a cliff at the end of that segment, doesn't it? Oh my God. Okay, so let's see if we got this straight. So you're a 51-year-old guy, and you and your 48-year-old wife decide you want to hotbox the car. Bad decision right there, right off the bat, right? But then somewhere in the process of figuring this out, you decide the thing to do would be to let the 13-year-old drive the car. Okay. See, there's a very important rule that we have on our little road that we're all traveling here, something that we like to call Steinborn's Law. Jeff Steinborn is a criminal defense attorney up in Washington State. He was for a long time on the normal board of directors. And Steinborn's Law says, only break one law at a time. So if you're going to be a marijuana consumer in a state like Iowa that is very harsh as far as marijuana consumers go, then only break one law at a time. If you got weed on you, don't be smoking it. And don't be smoking it in the car. And don't be smoking it in the car with a 13-year-old driving. You're breaking 4 laws right there. But this is something that, we can all learn from. We tell these stupid prohibition stories in the hopes that the listeners out there will recognize these crucial mistakes in judgment and not make them ourselves. Don't smoke weed in your car. Now, I know people have violated this rule. I know I've violated this rule. But it is the biggest risk you can take as a cannabis consumer. Really, if you're smart about it and you keep your cannabis use low profile, especially if you're white, there's very little risk that you're going to get caught with marijuana. If you're not carrying around big stinky sacks with you all the time, if you're not leaving the house all smelling like weed or dressed up, for a pot party, and again, if you're white, you can generally go through your life without ever getting busted for weed. Paul and Jacqueline, by the way, are white. In case you're wondering, I looked up the photos, the booking photos. You can get away with it if you don't make a bunch of stupid mistakes. So obey Steinborn's rule if you're not wanting to get busted, especially if you're living someplace, a state that starts with a vowel, are usually not the good ones. With the exception of Oregon. Oregon's pretty nice right now. Alaska's pretty nice too. But with those exceptions, if your state starts with a vowel, you'll want to be careful about your marijuana use. The other thing to take out of this is of course, the 13-year-old driving. And this is Sunday at 2:15. This is like in the middle of the afternoon. It's a Sunday afternoon. What was going through their mind to make them think that was necessary? It's not even the old excuse of the drunk driver who has the kid. Well, the kid's, more sober than me. Or maybe that was their excuse. He was the most sober driver they could find. I don't know how they do things in Iowa.
Rabba-dabba-goo!
All right, everybody, that sound means that it's 20 after the hour, 4:20 in Denver, Colorado, where marijuana is legal but not yet equal. Check out Denver Normal online and help them with their public use initiative to be able to create safe spaces for marijuana consumption among adults. We're back with some reefer madness debunking in the NYPD after this.
Legal to listen to all over the world. We're just not sure about France. CannabisRadio.com.
The cannabis industry is growing, business is booming, and as new opportunities arise in newly legalized states, each market is getting more competitive. Today, it takes more than just being a good grower. Do you have the resources to market and handle this ever-changing business landscape? Let Canna Management Corporation help you grow your canna business with our vast resources and experience to make your business a fully functional service company. Financial management, HR, sales, marketing, efficiency, and more. CMC has the experience and the expertise to improve your business and help you better meet the demands of your clients and customers. Call Canna Management Corporation and let our team get you ready to grow. 415-269-8015. That's 415-269-8015. Or visit canna-management.com.
Doc Rob, the concierge for better living.
Cannabis is just one of the many great plants that we have on this planet called Earth that we can use consciously and intelligently to improve our well-being.
Take a real, raw, inside look at healthier living while sharing great ideas and improvements for a better quality of life.
Learning to live and live well is a lifelong process. This is a journey. You could be 80 years old or 8 years old. You can still learn something that's going to make tomorrow a little bit healthier, a little bit easier, a little bit happier, a little bit better.
The concierge for better living with Doc Rob. Only on CannabisRadio.com.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your canna business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your canna business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead from fright.
You know, it's not easy countering 7 decades of propaganda in a 2-hour show, but let's try. It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Reefer Madness Debunked.
Today I want to take a listen to some reefer madness coming out of New York City, and in particular the police commissioner there, William Bratton. He recently appeared on the John Katzimatidis show, also known as Katz Roundtable, this AM 970 in New York City. And they were having a discussion about crime rates in the United States and heroin and the rising overdose rates and all of that. And strangely, Bratton, the commissioner of the NYPD, took the discussion into marijuana and how we're legalizing marijuana throughout the country. Let's give a listen here from Katz Roundtable. This was on the 22nd.
And Staten Island, we have even more significant problems in several other boroughs. So we had CompStat on last Friday that focused very specifically on this drug issue involving heroin. Interestingly enough here, however, in New York City, most of the violence we see, violence around drug trafficking, is involving marijuana. And I have to scratch my head as we're seeing many states wanting to legalize marijuana and more liberalization of policies. Here in New York, the violence we see associated with drugs, the vast majority of it is around the issue of marijuana, which is ironic considering the explosion in the use of heroin now in the city.
So that's the NYPD commissioner saying that the vast majority of drug violence that he sees in the city has to do with marijuana. And when I first heard that, I thought of the bully who grabs the weakling and grabs him by the wrist and makes him punch himself with his own fist. And stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Right? It's like, Commissioner Bratton, you do realize the reason that there is violence associated with the marijuana trade in any capacity whatsoever is because it is prohibited. Come on out here to Portland, Oregon, and come into a pot shop sometime. And what you'll find is a whole lot of marijuana trade going on and no violence associated with it. You'll find the same thing in Denver, Colorado. You'll find the same thing in Seattle, Washington. You'll find the same thing in 4 states now, and in plenty of medical marijuana states where medical transactions are going on. And the only violence associated with it is the occasional robbery that happens because, once again, prohibition keeps that green leafy substance in the price ranges of fine metals and gemstones. If this were completely a legal crop, absolutely 100% legal crop, and its pricing, even with sin taxes, were to get down to $20, $30, even $50 an ounce, a lot of the violence that you see associated with the marijuana trade would up and disappear. And the other thing about Commissioner Bratton's perspective on this issue, to say most of the violence we see around drugs has to do with marijuana, that is because most of the drugs are marijuana. Most of the drugs being used, most of the people using drugs have to do with marijuana. So, yeah, if there's violence in the drug trade as a whole, which there is, even with cocaine and heroin and meth, there's violence in any drug trade, in any prohibitionary trade. If the majority of that trade is in marijuana, then guess what? The majority of the violence would also be associated with the marijuana. Now, Commissioner Bratton's gotten roundly criticized on this issue. Morgan Fox of the Marijuana Policy Project had a statement saying, "It seems to me that statement could only be true if you just count the mere presence of marijuana. The mere presence of a small amount of marijuana at a crime scene or on the person of someone involved in a violent crime does not mean that marijuana was involved in or the motivation for that crime." Out at Reason.com, Jacob Sullum writes, quote, "That has to count as one of the most clueless statements on drug policy by a prominent public figure since Hillary Clinton declared that drugs are too profitable to be legalized. Like Clinton, New York City Police Chief Bratton is presenting an argument for legalization as an argument against it. Just as Clinton does not seem to understand that prohibition enriches criminals by making drugs artificially expensive and dropping the business into their laps, Bratton does not seem to understand that marijuana-related violence in New York City is a predictable product of the black market." But this isn't the first time, by the way, for Bill Bratton on this. Last year, 2015, he said, quote, "The seemingly innocent drug that's been legalized around the country. In this city, people are killing each other over marijuana more so than anything that we had to deal with in the 80s and 90s with heroin and cocaine. In some instances, it's a causal factor, but it's an influence in almost everything that we do here." End quote. Well, I got a solution for you, Commissioner. Just legalize it already. End the pretense that you're stopping anyone in New York City or anywhere from using marijuana. Hell, I was smoking a joint in broad daylight 2 blocks away from the United Nations as they discussed international drug treaties that forbid me from doing just that. Prohibition is a failure. It's a moral failure. It's a criminal justice failure. It's a public policy failure. It's a failure in every regard except enriching the prison guards union, the cops, the drug testers, the rehabs, and protecting big pharma, big timber, big oil, and so many others from the competition of natural cannabis. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a special salute to Michael Kennedy and Jerry Goldstein winning the first ever Michael Kennedy Normal Human Rights Achievement Award.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Being green is good. Growing green is good. Making green is great. CannabisRadio.com.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's TheSilverTour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from TheSilverTour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
This is the Russ Belville Show, annoying Kevin Sabet since 2012.
Are you playing an acoustic guitar but want to be louder without an amp? Try a resonator guitar. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic and other resonators, square necks and round necks. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com. Go wild hog in the woods.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Today in the activist agenda, we do a special salute to a man who meant so much to the cannabis community that maybe a lot of people in the cannabis community have no idea. And that man was Michael J. Kennedy. He was the counsel for High Times magazine since its founding over 40 years ago, defending Tom Forsaud, the marijuana smuggler who made High Times possible, and defending so many other notorious figures throughout the history of this country, including the first wife of Donald Trump, Ivana Trump, as a matter of fact. And you'll hear that and more in this salute. It includes a video of Michael Kennedy done by his documentary filmmaking son, and Jerry Goldstein from San Antonio winning the award in Kennedy's honor. Enjoy.
Now we have a very special event for you. I've been a lawyer for 41 years, and I've looked up to several lawyers, but some more than others, and some of my heroes are in the room. One of them recently passed away, Michael Kennedy, and we're going to talk about him. But Jerry Goldstein is about to receive an award from Keith Straub. So I'm going to ask Alan to introduce Keith. Thank you.
So after 46 years, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, have been members of Normal. It's a family. People have lived and died over these 2 generations at least. I'm a non-lawyer, though I've had to work with thousands and thousands of lawyers across the country. There are 600 members of Normal who are lawyers in the legal committee. Many of them are very radical. Some of them are very sophisticated. In my life, I was only blessed to meet one person who more or less combined both of those, and that was Michael J. Kennedy, the CEO of High Times Magazine, who passed this January. And so his son, who is a very gifted documentarist, has created a 4.5-minute video. And as I was saying to Anna Safer Kennedy, Michael's daughter, I love my father, but I don't think I could even create a 15-second video that would reflect his life to an audience that would appreciate the scope of his life and the choices he made. So for those of us who are, say, I'm 50, so if you're older than I am, you'll probably appreciate some of the clients that Michael represented. For those of you who are under 50, you probably have no idea the significance of the people he represented in American politics. So we're going to show the video. We're going to bring up Eleonora and Anna, and then Keith will introduce Jerry, who is an excellent first recipient of this award because he is, in my mind, one of those only other lawyers I've met who is remarkably radical and incredibly sophisticated. And he's an excellent, apt first, thank you, technophobe.
I never thought I'd live long enough to see marijuana begin to become legal, and I'm very glad to have played a role in that because my best friend started High Times Magazine, and I kept it alive for him all for 40 years. There's High Times. But we haven't forgotten our prisoners of war. We're remembering them. And we're getting them out gradually. My basic view of the law was that anybody our government didn't like couldn't be all bad, so we represented criminals. We represented people accused of crime, and did it proudly and did it with a remarkable amount of success. So in terms of the lawyers, the kind of lawyers who we've worked with, and the lawyers we hired over the years, and the ones we've helped train or mentor, learned from, have all had one thing in common. They were progressive human beings first. They cared about the earth. They cared about the humanity. They cared about the poor. They learned that from us. A lot of them today don't even remember the Vietnam War, but they remember that somebody stood up. Somebody stopped that war. Somebody was willing to fight. Fight the racism, fight the sexism, fight the paternalism, the imperialism that so profoundly permeates this country, and unfortunately still does. And the best place to fight them is in the courtrooms, because in the courtrooms you get a jury. Now, a lot of the jurors are afraid and cowed and scared and what have you, but you tell them a story, even though you're condemning the government, and there's a big difference between condemning the government and condemning our country, which we happen to love, just hate the fucking government, you know? Big difference. And a lot of the young people got that. Coming out of law schools then, I mean, we had a small practice in San Francisco at the time, and we always kind of stayed small. But the number of young people who wanted to come would come out of law school and say, come on, can we work for you? We'll work for free. We just want to do what you do. We want to fight the government toe-to-toe in court. We want to go to trial. We want to talk to juries. We want to be able to tell stories the way you do. So, I got some gifts. I mean, I've got the gifts of privilege. Not only my white skin, privilege, but the gifts of gab and what have you that we have, but the gift to be able to see beyond the short run, to know that it's not just about making today's buck. It's not about that. It's that we're all really in this together, and we'll never rise higher than the lowest. And when a lawyer understands that, then a lawyer can be trusted, not just to the extent of the law, but can be trusted completely. Okay? Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. So Keith can. I'll bring up Eleonora and Anna to relate the life and times of Michael, and for us to acknowledge that in the 46 years that Normal's been around, High Times has been the most faithful and supportive corporation we've ever encountered. Normal would not be here today if it wasn't for the Trans High Corporation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, Keith, Normal. Many people have strong convictions, but is the rare person who actually lived and loved their convictions. Michael, he was one. Michael stood up for those he felt were treated unfairly by the system, and fighting to ensure that all of us, no matter where we came from, had the rights we were entitled to as citizens. It's hard for me to imagine a world without him. For 40 years, he has played defense against prohibition of cannabis, along with his beloved Normal and Jerry Goldstein. Quote, teach the world to grow and defend those with the courage to take advantage of the gifts of cannabis, end quote. Now, with the end of prohibition firmly in our grasp, Michael, along with Normal and High Times, led the offense to create a free cannabis market for all adults, freedom for the prisoners of the war on marijuana, who he cared about the most, and full access for all who can benefit from the medical blessings of cannabis. He would say Jerry Goldstein is overqualified for this award. He respected and loved him. Their work together and support of Normal is legendary. He is so pleased. I know he's watching, and he's so pleased, Jerry. I found his notes for a very old convention of Normal. I think it probably was in the late 70s. And here's what he said, quote, in his speech. I hope you remember this, Keith. Help others where you can. Fuck the begrudgers and the government. Guard your liberty by exercising it. Fight for your rights and others. If the reason you can't find what you're looking for, it's because you're not looking where it is. Slap a racist every chance you get. Respect the young, the old first, and then the workers. Trust anyone you want, but cut the cards. Prison is the last frontier of racism and fascism. I am a Native American, a slave, an African American, an immigrant, a working trespasser. I am a criminal. Learn to forgive. Forgetting is optional. Michael was a rebel and a rogue, and I was proud to be his partner. Thank you so much.
My father talked about Jerry and Keith for so many years with such love and respect. His message was about endurance. His life was always a battle on behalf of others, and I know that Jerry and Normal will continue his legacy. In his own words, my father wrote, "Normal is the only grassroots organization in the country devoted to the consumer. Normal is the only organization that actually believes in the Declaration of Independence, our inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I am proud to be in the presence of an organization that has continued to support and has never abandoned the efforts of freedom fighters, responsible consumers, and the medical cannabis community. My father would be so proud that this award is being given in his name. Thank you."
Thank both of you. First off, I just want to underscore that in my life, I don't think I've ever met a grander criminal defense lawyer than Michael Kennedy. He was brilliant, he was classy, he was effective, he was radical as hell. During those early years that some of you younger folks may not remember, he represented Black Panthers, he represented Abby Hoffman, he represented people in the Indian reservation that were being persecuted. Any case that he could identify where people were unpopular, were fighting the government, didn't have privilege, Michael couldn't say no. And boy, did he accomplish a lot. Well, and which is why it is so appropriate that on the first award of the Michael Kennedy Social Justice Award would be my oldest and dearest friend, Jerry Goldstein. When we started Normal in 1970, Texas had the worst laws in the country, and they were giving out the longest sentences. So instinctively, we knew that if we were going to start to have an impact, we better go to the worst place in the country and start raising hell. And it wasn't long before I had made contact with my friend Jerry Goldstein. We had both been draft evaders. He was, at that point, representing a lot more draft evaders and others who were causing trouble in Texas. So I went down to Texas, and before long, Jerry had arranged for us to take the New York Times, the Associated Press, and numerous other big news organizations through the Texas prison system to interview a dozen or more of nonviolent marijuana offenders serving 10 and 20 and 30 years in prison. The New York Times ran a front page magazine article on it. AP, it went nationwide. You can imagine in those years what that meant. And what I principally learned from Jerry during those early years was to have no fear. This man has never shown fear. He stands up to power. He stands up to those who would oppress us without any concern of what it's going to do to his life or his career, etc. And as a result, he has become perhaps one of the top 2 or 3 criminal defense lawyers in the nation. Let me give you a few of his credentials. He's a past president of NACDL, which is the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, the Bar Association for lawyers who specialize in criminal defense, past president of the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers. He won Normal's Al Horn Award. He won the Robert Heaney Award from NACDL for Outstanding Criminal Defense Lawyer in the U.S. He won the Outstanding CDL of Texas State Bar, and he won the John Henry Falk Civil Liberties Award of the Year from ACLU. Please welcome a brilliant, committed man of social justice, Gerald H. Goldstein. By the way, let me read the inscription on his award, if I might. It says, "The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws awards Normal's Michael J. Kennedy Social Justice Award for 2016 to Gerald H. Goldstein, in recognition of your lifetime commitment to achieving social justice for all people, including especially those without the resources or social standing to achieve justice on their own. Your willingness to speak for the underdog, the disenfranchised, and the unpopular, like Michael Kennedy himself, has defined your exemplary personal and professional life. Here's your award.
Thank you, Keith, for those nice lies. I particularly on today want to thank and pay my respect to Eleonora, who is in my estimation, the first lady of my profession, and to the lovely Miss Anna, their daughter. I can't tell you how incredibly flattered I am, knowing full well that I'm probably one of the least deserving in this room, but by far the most appreciative. What makes this award so meaningful and poignant to me is the award's namesake. Michael Kennedy was so many different things to so many different people. A devoted father, a loving and dedicated husband who was your constant companion throughout 47 years, never spending a night away from one another. Your partnership, Eleonora, was an example and has continued to be an example to so many of our fellow travelers, including my bride, Christine, and I, who've been married for 47 years. A coincidence, I'm sure. Michael was my cherished friend and confidant. But more importantly, he was the patron saint of all that was good and remains exciting and worthwhile to all the rest of us. No one could hold a candle to your husband. He was always the brightest bulb in the room. But most importantly to my profession, Michael Kennedy was a giant among midgets in my profession. His strident voice, his righteous tone, his vibrant spirit filled every courtroom he stepped into. He was a sight to behold. The spectacle was always worth the price of admission. Michael Kennedy owned every courtroom and, quite frankly, every barroom he stepped into. In the 40 years I knew Michael, and I knew him well, we shared podiums together. We shared a lot of courtrooms and way too many barrooms, from one end of this country to the other. But Michael never failed to excite. He never failed to inspire me and those around him. He never failed to entertain. He never failed to move us from where we were to a better place. His client list, you saw some of them, speaks volumes. And to this young audience, look these up. Play with your computers. Rennie Davis, the Chicago 8. Gene Harris, John Gotti, Huey Newton, Timothy Leary, Bernardine Dorn, Cesar Chavez, Jim Mitchell of the famous O'Farrell Theater. Thank you, Keith. Hunter used to call it the absolute pantheon of sex trade in America. One of Hunter's books was Night Manager, about his term working at the O'Farrell. Ivana Trump, where your husband struck a blow for the women in this country and outed the Donald as the lying sack of shit that we know him to be today. Words like Black Panthers, Weather Underground, the Pizza Connection case, Wounded Knee, High Times Magazine, all bear Michael's signature and will remain. What brought us together, interestingly enough, was you, Keith. The glue that keeps us together is you, Keith, and Normal. And a recognition that, not to worry, that kind of spurs us all on. I usually have it near my crotch because my wife tells me that's the least sensitive place on my body. Just thank God it wasn't mine, which is usually the case. Yes, Your Honor. There was a recognition among all of us youngsters 40 years ago or so that our draconian drug laws in this country were oppressing an entire generation. They were criminalizing and imprisoning our youth, particularly those of color, the disadvantaged, the disillusioned, and often the best and the brightest we had. There was a recognition among us in those early years of what a waste, what a terrible waste of our youth, what a terrible waste of our resources this drug war had become. Almost 50 grand a year per bed per inmate. We could be sending the fuckers to Harvard. This is a serious and stupid waste of our economic resources and our talent and our efforts. And what compounds that is that wasn't enough. No, we stigmatize these individuals, make them convicted felons, ensure that they can't get a job, a decent job, make sure they can't get public housing, make sure they can't get medical care, and then we wonder why we have a problem with recidivism. What brings me here and what makes me the proudest is throughout this journey, Michael Kennedy was the Pied Piper of a band of young upstarts. Young upstarts with names like Tiger and Stepanian. Young upstarts who are not willing to accept the status quo. Young upstarts who are not willing to tolerate our society's intolerance any longer. Michael Kennedy gave me and this band of young upstarts the courage to stand up against intolerance, to stand up against injustice wherever and whenever it raised its ugly head. Michael's life in the law was a testament to the best tradition of our profession. He was a constant reminder that how we treat the least of us is how ultimately we can expect to be treated ourselves. It has been an honor for the past 40 or so years to call Michael Kennedy my able colleague and my dearest friend. I've never had a prouder moment than to stand here and receive this award in his name. Thank you. And thank you all.
That's Jerry Goldstein, winning the first ever Normal Michael J. Kennedy Human Rights Award. And the tribute to Michael Kennedy, another great defense lawyer, another freedom fighter, without whom High Times Magazine would not have survived, would not exist. I am so privileged to get the opportunity to meet some of these giants in our movement, and it's my pleasure and honor to bring their words to you here on the Russ Belville Show. Stay tuned. We've got more wisdom coming for you in Hour 2. Dr. Harry Levine and Dr. John Getman, Lauren Siegel from Marijuana Arrests Project. They'll be talking about pot and the police in a post-prohibition world. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.